I am immensely excited. I know what the topic is. Unfortunately, it's not the channel mascot, but we have talked about this one many times. Kent, tell everyone the topic.
So tonight we're going to be talking about the peppered moth.
The #1 pristine example of changing allele frequencies, and he thinks it's a problem for evolution.
Be a sport and grab Daddy another beer, would you?
Yeah, I'll get one too. Let's celebrate. So this is going to be a short one. Mainly his video is like 15 minutes long compared to his usual more than half-hour long videos. We're going to go into a lot more detail, and frankly I'm going to let Demon have his way with Kent this time.
Yeah, bitch!
He's been well behaved, and I feel he can let loose a bit more.
Why don't you shut your trap, you judgmental cotton candy tit-having bitch!
Maybe this was a mistake.
Fuck you old bitch!
No, you're supposed to insult him, not me.
Okay, fine.
Good. Let's move on.
Textbooks teach that there's a moth in England called the peppered moth. There's two different colors to this thing. White, basically white and black. So somebody went around and counted the moths on the trees, is how the story goes. They said, excuse me, they said it was 95% light-colored moths and 5% black because the trees were light-colored.
Kent is correct, for the most part. The peppered moths have been studied for like 200 years. At first, not for evolution, but because they were plentiful. However, there's not just two colors. The moths come in varying shades and patterns, so it's more of a gradient of shades. So, not the white and the black, but the lighter and the darker shades were about 95 and 5% at first. So I won't call Kent out for stupid comments.
Wait a second.
Yet.
Stay tuned.
Then they started burning coal in the factories in England back in the 1800s, and the trees turned black. So they counted the moths again and said it's only 5% light and 95% black. That's how the story goes.
Actually, it was higher than that. 98% darker shades. Now, the main reason for this was the coal and soot getting onto the light trees and making them darker. Now, the melanized moths were able to survive and pass on their genes, while the lighter ones weren't able to survive, and with the same number of moths, the distribution was different in the areas with pollution.
The whole thing is baloney. Didn't happen.
What?
Ah, you're stupid, huh? I could work with stupid, daddy likey dummy.
I mean, yeah, that was stupid. Kent, you can't seriously just hand-wave dismiss the Industrial Revolution.
There are two shades of this same colored moth. Are there different colors of dogs? Are there different colors of cats?
Hold on.
Dogs and cats aren't being hunted for food by the wild animal population, you absolute tool.
Nailed it.
That was the point. They were hunted and eaten by birds and bats while they could be seen. See, this is the level of Kent's dishonesty. He doesn't care about the actual truth of what happened to the moth. He only cares about barfing out his narrative. It's getting to the point that he's like a 90-year-old lactating woman. Sure, I can milk him for content, but is it really worth it? It's just going to leave a bad taste in my mouth.
Oh, getting cakey!
But that was the reason there was the change in population of the moth. The ones that didn't match the clean bark of the trees or the soot-laden bark of the trees got eaten, so the ones that matched bred.
What happened? Dr. Kettlewell in Oxford, England, introduced the peppered moth melanism, which means the color of their skin, the color of their moth, story in 1955 as evidence for evolution by natural selection. Since then, it has appeared in almost every biology textbook as evidence for evolution.
Yes, because that is what natural selection is. Not survival of the strongest, not survival of the smartest, not survival of the prettiest, survival of the fittest, meaning the ones that are fit to live in that environment. The environment, even if artificially influenced, will have an effect on things in that environment, causing the population, not the individual, the population to adapt, because the ones that were most able to survive in that environment were able to pass on their genetic code. But if the environment stays the same, eventually the less fit gene will be eliminated entirely. But in this case, it will not happen, since there are places in the areas that are both lighter and darker moths can hide. So what is Kent's rebuttal to all of this?
The publication Melanism, Evolution in Action, reviewed by Jerry Cohen in Nature magazine, lists the following problems with Kettlewell's story. The moth does not rest on tree trunks. Only 2 moths were seen resting on tree trunks in 40 years. So to take the picture for the textbook, he glued dead moths to a tree trunk.
Shut the fuck up!
I agree. Shall we?
Fulfill your destiny.
I plan on it.
Let's do this.
Kent is trying to cite a creationist study done in the 1980s and written about in many intelligent design forums. What the study in the 1980s tried to conclude is that Kettlewell was incorrect because an unnamed biologist and other unnamed biologists said that moths never really rest on tree trunks and instead hid on underneath branches on the same trees really high up. A few things with this. First, they're still on the trees Kettlewell mentioned. Second, they're really high up, and it would be more blatantly seen when they are on the underside because the place you're looking at them from is below. And as soon as you start climbing, they're going to start leaving because now there's a lumbering large predator getting at them. Now, what Kent isn't going to mention is Michael Majerus. What Michael did is a revisit to the entire peppered moth debate starting in 1998. In an analysis of the works of Kettlewell, and started experimentation in 2001 to put an end to the issues once and for all. He did 7 years of observation and experimentation on 4,864 moths, and only stopped because he passed away. After his death, his work was peer-reviewed by a large number of scientists in Great Britain and the United States, and the papers were published in 2012, which locked Michael Majerus in with his work absolutely vindicated with this conclusion. The new data, coupled with the weight of previously existing data, convincingly show that industrial melanism in the peppered moth is still one of the clearest and most easily understood examples of Darwinian evolution in action. Not to mention, they found that 25% of the moths rested on the tree trunks, 25% rested on the branches, and the remaining 50% at the junction of the branches and the trunks of those same trees.
Fuck you.
So Kent is, as always,
a bullshit, a bullshit, a bullshit.
Nailed it. How many lies is Kent going to barf out from here? Let's find out.
Kettlewell's results have not been replicated. They've tried it again. It didn't work.
That's one.
So Kettlewell, apparently in 1955, either lied or was dumb.
And two.
The shift in the moth population did occur. They did become more dark or more light, but it took place well before new lichens grew on the polluted trees. A parallel shift in moth population occurred in the U.S. industrial areas, but there was no change in the lichens.
And three. It's not a change in the lichens if it's actual pollution itself, and he knows it.
The peppered moth is a great proof of design.
Now this is bullshit I gotta hear.
God wants to make sure the moth survives no matter what happens to the environment. That's planning ahead.
Planning ahead. How is it planning ahead if the change occurs after the environmental change that he said was a lie earlier? Kent is all over the place today. If God wanted to plan ahead, wouldn't it make more sense to create a situation where we could have the industrial age without all the pollution that came with it? I mean, we're trying to fix the damage we did now, but that would have been much more productive of a solution for a perfect being.
Only 2 moths were actually seen resting on the trees.
And 4. Kettlewell saw a lot more than that, and he noted that he did. The reason he placed 2 moths in the tree next to each other was to show how one blends in and the other does not.
If the moth is really evolving into a new color to hide, why didn't any of them just evolve green?
Angel? You know what? I'll let you and Demon tag team to answer this. Well, I am Corsi, and this is The Fluffy Atheist. Pet those like and subscribe buttons, and remember, a little research does go a long way. Let The Fluffy Atheist do it for you.